Andrew Hutchings here, still not a licensed physician, not giving medical advice. It's purely educational and for entertainment. Vaccines. What's the bottom line with them? Well, first of all, like everything in life, it's not black and white. A lot of people like to think of things in life as black or white because it's more complicated, it's more effortful to actually try to figure out the real truth of the matter. It's easy to say, that guy's the good guy, that guy's the bad guy, this is good, that's bad. That's not how most things are in real life. The same is the case for vaccines. Now, first of all, let's throw aside certain vaccines that were from a few years ago. That's a topic for a different discussion. But looking at all the other vaccines, which you first of all have to realize are not very related to those vaccines a few years ago. So some people that got very against those vaccines that came out a few years ago, they then applied that logic to all vaccines, which is a really bad thing to do because there's very, 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 very little in common between all vaccines in general and those ones that maybe we shouldn't even call vaccines that came out a few years ago. So let's start with the fact that both with those new ones and with all vaccines in general, there are different types of vaccines. You have adenoviral vaccines, where you basically have a weak virus that you change to deliver. You basically make a weak virus, but it's not the real virus, but it delivers the payload of the real virus, or at least some sort of payload that resembles the one of the real virus. You also have attenuated viral vaccines, which are the actual virus, but a weaker form of it. You have inactivated viral vaccines, which are the actual virus, but they're dead. But they still have that payload that your body can react to. Then you also have vaccines which only contain the payload. Those are protein vaccines. So the bottom line is, one way or another, you got to get that protein payload into the system. Well, I almost forgot the mRNA vaccines. Technically you can use them as vaccines, but I think the evidence is that it's a very bad idea, at least at the current time, in the current way they're formulated. mRNA vaccines deliver mRNA, which produces the protein inside of your own body. The bottom line is all these different forms of vaccines get that same protein payload into your body. I'm not going to repeat all the different types, but yeah. The protein vaccine is the most straightforward. You just take that protein and you just inject it in. The mRNA, I don't know if I'd say it's the most complicated now. But they all get that protein into you one way or another. And how your body reacts depends on a lot of factors. Some big ones are how much of that protein you get into you, whether your body can limit the production of that protein, which ties back to how much of that protein you get into you. Whether it has to deal with things besides that protein. So say you take an actual virus, that virus is a lot more complicated and has a lot more actions than just one single protein. It's a lot more complicated for the immune system to fight a virus versus a single protein. Excuse my nasal drip or whatever this is. Weather's getting a little cold, but until it gets below 0, it's not that cold. Okay, so vaccines. Lots of different types, and what does that mean? Well, it means there's lots of different types. They're all really different. You got to take that into account. They all are going to elicit a different... They're all going to place a different amount of stress on the body and elicit a different strength of response to that stress. Because at the end of the day, no matter what kind of vaccine, you are putting a stress on the system. A stress is something that throws the body out of whack. It puts the system out of balance, and it must counteract that. It's an energetic process. It takes energy, it takes life force, it takes resources. It's not just something you can do infinitely. If your organism, your body, your system, whatever you want to call it, is responding to one stress or threat, whatever you want to call that, it has less resources to attack a different one and deal with that. And it also has less resources to devote to other bodily processes. So our body doesn't only have the sole function of fighting off foreign invaders. So we'll just refer to all the vaccines, all pathogens, all everything that shouldn't be in you that enters you as a foreign invader. Your body has to do a whole lot more than just fight off foreign invaders every day. It's got to maintain the structural integrity of your entire body. It's got to produce a lot of different molecules to function as communicating molecules. There's a lot it is doing. So if you give it too many enemies to fight off, it's got less resources and energy to be building, to be communicating for proper function of stuff it's already built. It's not a good thing. Now, to add a little more complexity to that picture, it's one thing when that's going on when you're already a fully developed adult. If you're a fully developed adult, everything's already formed, but it can kind of start to fall apart, but then you can kind of build it back up. It's not the worst thing if your body is lacking resources and energy for a relatively short amount of time. You'll probably get over it, you'll be fine. Ideally you wouldn't have that happen, but you're already fully grown and developed. It's just exhausting you. Now, if you're not fully grown and developed, and your body comes under attack, and it has to devote all that energy and resources to fighting off the invaders, it's not devoting that energy and resources to developing the proper human organism that it will have for the rest of its life. And developmental processes for humans, they don't just take a pause. I don't know how to symbolize it. They don't just pause like a TV remote when you get bombarded with foreign invaders that you have to deal with. No, development keeps going. There's a cascade of events, and they don't really take, in rare circumstances they can take breaks. In rare circumstances they can come on later. But usually, this is a non-stoppable cascade of events that can be interrupted, and if interrupted, it just never gets done, or it gets done wrong. So it's a very bad idea to take away or to demand too much energy and resources of a developing human's body to be devoted to attacking invaders. Now, it's even more simple than that. It's not just about the foreign invaders, it's about general stress on the system. You do not want a developing human organism. Now, to be even more precise, you do not want developing human organisms, especially in certain ages, like the first couple years of life. It's kind of, you might have guessed that that's the most important time, but, and in the womb. But you certainly don't want a developing human organism at its most crucial point of development to have to deal with stresses and take its energy and resources away from developing properly. Whether that stress is a severe illness, whether that stress is extreme cold, whether that stress is 70 vaccines all at once. It doesn't matter. The point is, regardless of what that stressor is, it's taking away the body's energy and resources from other things it needs to do, which for a baby is developing the organism for the rest of its life. It's a process that you can't turn the clock back on. You can't fix it. You're just screwed. That's the bottom line. Morons will go, oh, but there's no evidence of that. We give all these things to everybody and they're fine. Well, what is fine? Is fine you got a beating heart and you're alive? That's better than being dead, but I don't think we should define fine as not being dead. Not to repeat myself, but it's certainly a lot better than being dead, but you gotta be a medical moron to think that your diagnostic criteria is the patient is alive, there must not be anything bad going on. Nothing bad could have happened, nothing bad is currently going on, nothing bad will happen because the patient is currently alive. And that's pretty much the logic they apply to giving babies dozens and dozens and dozens of vaccines in a very short amount of time, which exposes the organism to a massive amount of stress and redirects its energy and resources to dealing with that rather than developing. So it is without a doubt that giving babies all these vaccines does cause developmental retardation, developmental dysfunction, whatever you want to call it. I mean, well, retardation and dysfunction are two different things, but you're probably going to have both of those together. The bottom line is it's not good. So you should use some intelligence and think, which of these vaccines are actually important? The question is not which of these vaccines are safe when tested alone on a grown human adult. The question is, which of these vaccines are so important that we should actually give them all together to a baby while it's still developing? Do the pros outweigh the cons? There's a big difference between an adult human who's going to travel to Africa getting a special vaccine to protect against some rare disease in Africa versus a developing baby getting dozens and dozens and dozens of vaccines all at once. Big difference. I am not anti-vaccine. Vaccines are great. We need vaccines. They're very important. It's stupid when people take this stance of, oh, vaccines are horrible. No, they save a lot of lives. They probably I can't say probably. They very possibly have saved your life. This world would be a very scary, dangerous place if we didn't have vaccines. But that's not to say that we should be pumping our babies full of them at the most crucial point in their development and with just a massive amount. So, I'm not an expert on which diseases are most widespread and most deadly. It's not the hardest information to find. Now, of course, it is complicated by the fact that the numbers we would have today are not representative of what they would be if we didn't have vaccines. So, if you are not very intelligent, you would go, "But look, we don't have very much diphtheria. Why do we need vaccines?" Well, that's a big part of the reason we don't have very much of it is everybody's vaccinated against it. But then we have to think how, if we currently don't really have it, how would it be reintroduced into the population? And the answer is through immigrants. That's a good reason to put a big wall around your country and vet everybody who comes into it. Because when you do that, you can ensure that you know which pathogens are entering your country. If you have eradicated a certain disease and you don't want your whole population to have to take vaccines against it for all of eternity, you have to control the influx of people with that disease. And where do they come from? They come from third world countries that don't have all these vaccinations. So you see, it's a complex picture. It's not black or white. And the bottom line is there are certainly negative side effects for babies when they get all these vaccines all in a short amount of time. Would an adult human, would I right now have serious side effects, or even let's just say significant side effects? Would I have non-negligible side effects if I got a single vaccination for any which disease right now? Probably not. Probably not. I just forgot exactly what I said. It most likely wouldn't matter much for me. I'm done developing, it's a single vaccine, my body can deal with the stress and then recover afterwards. But that's a lot different from bombarding a developing baby with dozens of them all at once. Because that baby, on top of it being a zillion vaccines, not just one, so it's a big stress that takes a lot of recovery. You don't recover the development. Development doesn't just pause and start back up. It gets disrupted or halted. but not halted in the sense that it just starts back up from where it left off. I mean, it can do that, but it's also going to just end early, so you just wouldn't finish it. This is all semantics, but the bottom line is there's consequences for subjecting a developing human organism to all this stress while it's developing. And then how much stress each vaccine gives, once again, depends on the type of vaccine, like I went over in the beginning. But when you're taking dozens of them, that becomes a little bit irrelevant. Because, you're taking dozens of them. Even if half of them aren't the worst for you, when you're taking dozens of them along with ones that are worse for you, and you're taking them during the most crucial point of development in your life, they become a problem. So I hope you like this video. I hope it gives you a little more full thinking about this topic. Vaccines are not bad. Vaccines can be bad. Not all vaccines are the same. Some things that are called vaccines probably aren't even vaccines. And the world's a complicated place. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Check out my other videos. Check out my Instagram, AndreyHutch, AndreyHutch. You can buy my book on tendinitis, A Systematic Guide to Defeating Tendinitis. You can hire me for training, advice, coaching, consultations, plans, whatever. Same thing with diet, same thing with supplements, same thing with special supplements, same thing with harm reduction, whatever. You can hire me for it. Chemistry tutoring, biology tutoring, med school tutoring, whatever.